A warm welcome to all, whether you're here today in person or joining us on YouTube. I'm Lucille LePage, and I'm privileged to be this morning's worship associate. Just a few announcements before the service begins. Kiana will be providing childcare during the service for elementary-aged children and older downstairs. And the Gloucester Meeting House Foundation is planning to sponsor a 2-hour symposium in April on the topic of navigating health care on Cape Ann. And today, following the service, Karen Bell will be in the vestry at coffee hour on behalf of the GMF Events Committee. She'll talk about this upcoming event and will listen to your ideas on the topic of health care in Cape Ann. Also at coffee hour, Florence Melvin will be selling Girl Scout cookies. And on Wednesday, this Wednesday, February 28th, Reverend Janet will lead a drop-in meditation session here in the sanctuary. It'll take place from 4 to 5 p.m., but people are welcome to stay as long or as short as they want. It is a drop-in. You can stay for 10 minutes, 20, or the full hour. The session will close with a short walking meditation, and this is one of a series of Wednesday programs that I believe will be taking place weekly for the next couple of months with different approaches each week. But this week it's meditation. Everyone's welcome, and you're encouraged to bring a friend if you'd like. The book discussion group will meet next here on Wednesday, March 13th at 1 p.m. in the social hall. If you'd like to join the group, you will read and discuss Joanne Hart's new book, High Wire Act and Other Tales of Survival. And Joanne, who, as you know, is a church member, will be our honored guest at the discussion meeting on March 13th. As you finish reading the book, you're encouraged to bring your copy to church to share with someone else. There's more news and information about our church life, of course, in your emailed weekly church announcements. You are strongly encouraged to read these each Friday when they show up in your inbox, because you don't want to miss any of the news about church life. There's a lot going on. If newcomers or longtime attendees would like to learn more about the church or get in touch with Reverend Janet, please just fill out one of the yellow cards on the backs of the pews, and you can just drop the card in the offering plate or give it to me after the service. We hope that those of you who are here today will join us after the service for coffee hour and conversation in the social hall downstairs. All you have to do is follow the crowd out the door and down the stairs. And if you're watching from home, we encourage you now to take a minute to get a candle or chalice and matches ready so you can join in when we light the chalice here shortly after the service starts. Today, we are very fortunate to have Reverend Joe Murphy leading our service. Reverend Joe is the executive director of UMass Action, where she's busy mobilizing, organizing, and advocating for social change in Massachusetts. Joe is also quite busy with her 10-month-old daughter, Simone, and Reverend Joe loves the ocean. She loves liberation and brunch with an array of beverages. A warm welcome to you, Reverend Joe. Thank you. And now our service will begin.
Welcome and good morning. My name is Rev Jo Murphy, and as Lucille said, I work for UU Mass Action, an organization that does legislative action by organizing UU churches such as yourselves. I don't know what's usually done in the welcome this morning, but I like to do a good stretch. So since I will be preaching on justice, I invite you all from your seats in whatever way feels comfortable you to do a social justice stretch. So we're going to reach down to the grassroots and up to the sky for inspiration and stomp out injustice and then move with the winds of change. And one more time to reach down to the grassroots for power and up to the sky for inspiration. Stomp out injustice and then move with the winds of change. Welcome in. For those of you who woke up this morning with joy, welcome in. For those who woke up this morning still in need of more sleep, welcome in. For those who woke up this morning with trepidation, welcome in. For those who woke up laughing, for those who woke up crying, for those who woke up in sorrow and grief, welcome in. Welcome in to all who woke up this morning, all bringing your different hearts to come together in worship, to beat as one, to form our collective heart. Let us worship. If you would now join me in rising and singing as you are able in our opening hymn, number 1007 in the turquoise hymnal, "There's a River Flowing in My Soul."
Flowing in my soul.
In the Unitarian Universalist faith tradition, we enter into worship by lighting our chalice. The bowl of the chalice represents the encircling arms of our community. The flame represents our never-ending search for wisdom and love. Those at home may wish to light a candle now also with us. We take a moment to affirm the covenant that we share. The words to the affirmation are printed in your order of service. In the light of truth and the warmth of love, we gather to seek, to sustain, and to share. Life is a gift for which we are grateful. We gather in community to celebrate the glories and the mysteries of this great gift.
I have heard that you've been lighting this peace candle since the beginning of the war in the Ukraine. I am sad to say that we are still lighting this candle for Ukraine and for all the violence and conflicts that persist in our world. May there be an end to them all, and may there be light.
Today's reading is Perhaps the World Ends Here by Joy Harjo. The world begins at a kitchen table. No matter what, we must eat to live. The gifts of earth are brought and prepared, set on the table. So it has been since creation, and it will go on. We chase chickens or dogs away from it. Babes teethe at the corners. They scrape their knees under it. It is here that children are given instruction on what it means to be human. We make men at it. We make women. At this table, we gossip, recall enemies and the ghosts of lovers. Our dreams drink coffee with us as they put their arms around our children. They laugh with us at our poor falling down selves, and as we put ourselves back together again, once again, at the table. This table has been a house in the rain, an umbrella in the sun. Wars have begun and ended at this table. It is a place to hide in the shadow of terror, a place to celebrate the terrible victory. We have given birth on this table and have prepared our parents for burial here. At this table, we sing with joy, with sorrow. We pray of suffering and remorse. we give thanks. Perhaps the world will end at the kitchen table while we are laughing and crying, eating of the last sweet bite.
The writer Bell Hooks tells us to be loving is to be open to grief, to be touched by sorrow, even sorrow that is unending. There is so much sorrow in the world right now, but there is also so much joy. We have so much capacity to love and to have that stand with our sorrow. Let us breathe in and open our hearts. Let us imagine them growing and growing, letting not even more love in, but more capacity to give and to receive. Let us breathe in to receive. Let us breathe out and give. Let us breathe in and receive. Let us breathe out and give. Let us remember that we are loving, and may all the prayers on your hearts today be in and to love. Let us take a moment of silence before our sung response. You are ready to gently come back to the room and join me in opening your books and singing 352, Find a Stillness.
Now, to support this church and all of its ministries, the morning's offering will be taken. Blessings upon the givers and upon your gifts.
In remote forests in Madagascar, there is an orchid that is somewhat star-shaped. A delicate branching of white petals, she is often called the star of the forest. She may look delicate, and one may think her name comes from her shape, but she is also the star of the forest because she grows in complete darkness. This isn't just a survival technique for her, she thrives in darkness. The orchid gets nutrients from underground fungus, does not have chlorophyll for photosynthesis, but cuts through the forest dirt every so often to attract pollinators, such as ants. I loved reading about this orchid. I love knowing that there is thriving in darkness. This orchid is a reminder for me about the ability for life to survive and thrive in unexpected places, in dark forest floors. Beautiful, delicate, perhaps a piece of joy, thriving orchids that live happily and healthily in the dark. We are all in need of the possibility that exists within thriving orchids. In my work as a leader of the organization UU Mass Action, working alongside organizers on legislation, advocacy, and change in the areas of climate and environmental justice, indigenous justice, decarceration, immigrant, and economic justice, I of course feel the need for possibility. In these movement spaces doing this work, I find myself standing in that awkward position of not being very hopeful, but having hope for the possibility of hope. I know that people have the capacity to do better, even when I've seen again and again that we do not always act on that capacity. When thinking about what blocks my ability to move from having hope in hope to just hope, I think about my ability to grieve. I believe that if we take time and space to grieve and be in grieving, we have a greater capacity for joy, for delight, and we need this joy. We need this delight to continue on in movement spaces, to continue on, to remember why we fight. Some summers ago, Joni Mitchell, who is now 80, I believe, made a surprise guest appearance at the Newport Jazz Festival and sang Both Sides Now with Brandi Carlile. This is a haunting, definitely sad-sounding song, and when I watched the video online, I did not weep, I sobbed. I'm sure many of you have experienced songs, art, moments that feel that they are breaking you open. I think this song, for both its melody and lyrics about knowing life and actually realizing you don't at all, and that's okay, was something that broke me open. Now, in moments like these, it is less effective to talk about them, but more when you're talking about music and art, to feel them, to sing them. Do people know the song Both Sides Now? Well, if you do, you can just pop right in and I'll sing a little bit of it, but I invite you to sing if you know. Rows and flows of angel hair and ice cream castles in the air and feather canyons everywhere. I've looked at clouds that way, but now they only block the sun. They rain and snow on everyone. So many things I would have done, but clouds got in my way. I've looked at clouds from both sides now, from up and down, and still somehow it's cloud illusions I recall. I really don't know clouds at all. Moons and Junes and Ferris wheels, the dizzy dancing way you feel as fairy tale comes real. I've looked at love that way. Thank you. Well, we can keep going if you want. Part of me, when I was listening to this, was sobbing in the moment, part because it was so beautiful, part because of loving Joni Mitchell and seeing her still singing, and part of it was I just needed to cry. I was reminded of the Adrienne Marie Brown quote, "Remember, you are water, of course you leave salt trails, of course you are crying." In a sermon about despair written in 2019, the Reverend Victoria Safford responds to the despair and grief people were feeling at the times with, "Time is not an arrow shot from the bow at the beginning and propelling history inevitably in one doomed direction. It is not. There are no straight lines in this round world, no guarantees, and seasons change and movements grow. Hearts beat on, and all things like water ebb and flow. Despair can give way to resistance if you voice it in community. Grief can become resilience if you honor the weight of it and let others help you bear it. Cynicism can be melted, grim certainty unrusted. Apathy can wake up if the music's loud enough and strong enough." In this time of our history when violence rages on, wars begin and continue, our climate feels on edge, if not already in the midst of disaster, there is reason for despair. There is reason for despair, for grief, for cynicism, for apathy. It is one thing to talk about melting cynicism, having despair give way to resistance, but how does it all come about? How are we not consumed by despair? How do we carve room and make room for joy, delight, the things that make our world worthwhile, our survival worthwhile and beautiful? My recipe is threefold. First, don't forget your people. Gather them, cook for them, care for them, love them in all the ways. Be gathered. Let your people gather you, cook for you, love you. Gather people around the kitchen table where Joy Harjo, the author of the poem this morning, tells us life ends but also begins. Gather your people, be gathered, and then the second is let yourself cry, let yourself grieve. And finally, after being gathered, after grieving, we remind ourselves why we survive. This is the part where we dance, we eat the food we have cooked, we sing, we remember that our survival is beautiful. Do not forget your people, let yourself grieve and cry, and remember why we want to survive. Often before I board an airplane, I text many people. I then turn my phone on airplane mode, and when I land, I turn it back on, and it starts dinging, and it fills up with texts, with messages from so many people I love. Do things such as this. Remind people that you love them, and open yourself to being reminded of all those that love you. Be with people and let them remember, let them remind you that life wants life. Next, we let go of despair and let our bodies, our hearts grieve. Once the people have been gathered, fed, and loved, let the grief be felt, let the tears fall. As I noted earlier, Adrienne Marie Brown tells us, remember, you are water, of course you leave salt trails, of course you are crying. Tears that are not pain themselves, but a release of pain. A sign of the pain, a physical representation of grief. As a leader, as a minister, part of accepting grief is necessary to staying in the work, to staying connected to the world. Accepting grief is part of avoiding despair. Not only do we need to grieve, we are grieving in the midst of so many losses and circumstances that persist, that continue. We are tired of making so many decisions that are not flippant decisions, but that relate to our survival. We are tired of living through uprisings and seeing racism viciously persist. We are tired of violence building rather than diminishing. We are tired of war. We are tired of hatred being acted upon by violence, by occupation. We are tired of violence at the borders, at our detention centers, our prisons. We are tired of fighting for an earth that some seem to care about and others don't. We are tired. Of course we are crying. And as we gather and as we cry, let us remember that despair may be paralyzing, but grief doesn't have to be. In an article entitled Eco-Anxiety, entitled, "How Can I Stay Hopeful as the World Burns?" Aisha Mirza interviews Robin Wall Kimmerer, author of the book Braiding Sweetgrass, Indigenous Wisdom, Scientific Knowledge, and the Teaching of Plants. Mirza asks Kimmerer how she stays hopeful, and she says, "The grief is heartbreaking, but what I try to do is to feel that deeply. Grief can paralyze us. It can bring us to despair and hopelessness, but when we recognize that the pain we are feeling is ecological compassion, it's love for a world that is strong and fierce, and lets us say, 'Not on my watch.'" The other day, I walked out of a church after giving a similar sermon about grief. As you may now know from the announcements, I have a daughter who is 10 months old, and she was at the nursery at the time I was giving my sermon. After I finished and shook a few hands, I went to get my daughter and came back to coffee hour. I came back to the chattering coffee-laden air holding my daughter Simone. Someone approached me and said, "You must be much more hopeful than you let on to bring this beautiful baby into the world." And I am. I am much more hopeful than I let on. Am I scared, grief-stricken, and angry too? Yes. But again, life wants life, and I have so much hope for this broken world. I brought life into the world because I believe that there is a great life for her to live. And so I gather my people, I let myself be gathered. I come home to a household where 2 babies live. We cook meals for each other, we sing, we say grace, we pass the babies around, we tend to the 8-year-old, we pet the anxious, neurotic dog. We sweep our floors, bake bread, and lend each other our cars. We make themed cocktails, bake cakes, and celebrate the life that is here, the life that is. We gather, we cry, we celebrate our survival. It is no joke to feel grief deeply, especially when there's so much to grieve. But I think it helps when we know that in part to grieve is to love. The last part of my recipe is to act on this love, to remember why we move, why we work to protect this world and each other. For this part of the recipe, do what you love. Experience joy and delight, dance, sing, go see art, go to the ocean, listen to something that makes you laugh, make someone else laugh. Remind yourself of why you love your life. We are excellent at loving. Let that not go to waste. Our perhaps broken hearts certainly have a lot of territory to cover, but I have hope and knowledge that our hearts can indeed cover it. I think it's going to take work, but not more than we can handle. We do not do it alone, and we do not do it in despair. To want to survive in of itself is a beautiful thing. To want to survive in a broken world that is maybe on flames is even more beautiful, and perhaps it is at its core hope. Gather your people, let your tears flow, make music that is strong enough, that is loud enough. In a recent conversation with an organizer, we talked about the fear we encounter when we're trying to organize. at loving. You would now join me as you are willing and able in singing our closing hymn, 354, We Laugh, We Cry. We will sing the first verse and the last verse, verse 1 and 4. Benediction, I'd like to do a blessing of the hands. If you are comfortable, you can raise your hands. Blessings on all of these hands, apart in physical space, together in the work, together in spirit. Blessings on these hands that are called to the labors of love. Bless the hands that bring comfort, care, that bring hope, that bring us together to meet. Bless the hands that organize, pray, cook, help with programming. Bless the hands that clean, sew. Bless the hands that dance. Bless the hands that together do the work that needs to be done. May these hands receive as well as give. May they continue to unite with other hands, and may we all be held in the blessing that is hands coming together. Amen, and blessed be. We will now extinguish the chalice as we do at the end of every service. The unison words are in your order of service. We
extinguish the flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
you.